edit was the challenge was how do we give the feeling of real time without actually having to be in real time. Fire building scene, I kind of accelerated through some of those steps, used a lot of jump cuts, used sound design kind of to move us through, still seeing her labor, still seeing her doing all that work and compressing time. And then when she gets to the point where she's actually trying to light the fire, then it's in real time. And there's like one shot that's like 90 seconds long and she's just like staring at the fire. All those steps also is what helps establish the stakes. If she can't get a fire going, she can't boil water and then she could die. So like the stakes could not be higher.
Hi, I'm Jamie Hitchings of Filmmaker U. At Filmmaker U, we create courses for film professionals to deepen and diversify their skill set. You can learn more on Filmmaker U, and don't forget to like, subscribe, or comment on our YouTube channel. Every week we interview film professionals, and this week we are joined by Celia Beasley, whose work includes Penelope, I'll Show You Mine, and The Wizard of Pause. Thank you for joining us this week, Celia. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
No problem. I want to center our conversation around Penelope. And Penelope it's a beautiful series. And what struck me about Penelope is that the introspection that Penelope has being in the wild versus these beautiful vistas, these beautiful landscapes that she's able to kind of experience and process her emotional journey. Can you tell me a little bit about the post-production workflow? Because I imagine there was a lot of footage that you had to select from.
Yeah, there was a lot of footage for sure. So the series was shot a little bit unusually for TV in that the whole thing was shot in one shoot. So like basically like a feature, like a really really long feature. Um, and throughout that shoot, there was B-roll that was being picked up as they went, but then there were also several kind of dedicated B-roll shoots later on. And so I was editing in Seattle, and my two AEs and our post super were in LA. And so I was editing, and my AEs were getting footage like as we were, as the edit was underway. So they were constantly getting a new footage, and they were processing it and organizing it based on a system I've used for features in the past. So it was kind of following that format. And then the B-roll stuff was really interesting. And David Robbins, one of my AEs, had a really great way to use the metadata in Premiere to be able to tag shots so that it was this basically huge database, and I could look for like golden hour, water, wide shot, or leaf, winter, or whatever it was. And so that was really helpful. And so yeah, I mean the process of getting the shots in, Penelope is this whole series focuses around Penelope's experience, and we're really with her, with either seeing what she's seeing her experience things, and sometimes we actually like kind of go in her head, like in her consciousness, and kind of play back and forth between kind of being a little bit on the outside, like a mouse on her shoulder, versus actually inside her consciousness. But I mean the wilderness of the Pacific Northwest is so beautiful and so grandiose. It could be tempting to kind of just keep everything really epic, but Penelope's experience is very intimate with the wilderness. I mean, she's looking at the tiniest little details. When she's foraging for food, she really has to pay attention to those details because she could die otherwise. So part of it was really, we did have those sort of sweeping, beautiful landscape shots every now and then to just remind the audience of how remote of a place she's in and how grand and beautiful it is. But really, most of it was really shot with this intimacy of seeing what she's seeing, paying attention to what she's paying attention to. And I just love the cinematography led by Nate Miller, and then June Zandona, who's the B camera operator. And both of them just got these like beautiful little windows into these details of like a caterpillar crawling up a blade of grass, or a slug slithering, or like a leaf sort of twirling in a spider web. And it was really like treating the nature as its own character and sort of letting the action play out in these little shots. So then finding the right B-roll to really match the scene and the environment based on, obviously things like time of day, but also physically, geographically where she was. Mel really was very really wanted to be very true to the geography of the place. So, I might throw in a B-roll shot of like a Western red cedar, and she's like, there aren't any cedars where Penelope is. And I'm like, okay, really? But it was really important to her. And so ultimately I think that really led to that the authenticity of the series and feeling like we're really immersed in an environment.
My friends and I would make little videos in our backyards, imitations of Indiana Jones and Star Wars. And, eventually that need to tell stories became more of a technical interest and an interest in the art. To me, what's exciting is using cinema in its full potential, which is rhythm and sound design and music. Our job is to set up expectations and then deliver on them. I'm Brian Cates, and this is my course in film editing.
What struck me about the opening of the series was that we didn't hear Penelope speak until about, I'd say about 9 minutes in. And I don't want to give too much away. I'm going to try to kind of skirt around it a little bit. And when we do finally hear her speak, it's kind of in regards to her reliance on technology. And she communicates non-verbally with her mother via text message before. And I think her happiest that we see her before she actually communicates verbally is with the rabbit, um, which is kind of a catalyst for other things. But was that scripted, or was that something that was kind of developed in the editorial process?
It was both scripted and also leaned on or elaborated in the edit. Um, I mean, it's definitely a series of few words. I mean, if you've watched the whole thing, there's some episodes have, like maybe 100 words in the whole episode. But yeah, the tone that we were trying to create and that Mark Duplass wrote in the script was really this, this slow introspection, sort of letting things develop, letting us, go along Penelope with her, in her journey and experience things as she's experiencing them, and also not belabor things and not over explain. And I mean, she's kind of on a journey of discovery herself, and she's kind of a little bit like following this sort of impetus, but she doesn't necessarily have, verbal thoughts that are attached and sort of a plan and things like that. And I think, part of what we enjoyed playing with in this series was challenging the audience to maybe, kind of like seeing abstract art where there's a feeling there and there's an emotional motivation there, but it isn't necessarily explained. It's not about something. It doesn't have, some sort of linear logical construct around it. And so to create a show where we're watching this girl sort of develop, grow into herself and explore these things, and we're able to kind of project ourselves maybe into it too, or relate to her in ways that are personal to us without it being sort of beaten over the head with this is what's happening and this is the reason and this is, this is the, if you miss this little thing then you're not going to understand this thing. I mean, it's more experiential, I would say, than sort of, literal, like building a puzzle. And so yeah, so the nonverbal elements of it were a big part of that, because most, I mean, when we think, sometimes we have sort of thoughts, that verbal thoughts that come out in our head, but often it's sort of just a feeling, and they're kind of tumbling around. So we also played with that in terms of that going in and out of her head and kind of in and out of her consciousness, with also in the pilot there's a scene on the train where she's recording a voice memo, and we sort of played with the atemporality of that. So we're hearing her say those words without her mouth moving, and then other times we are seeing her on camera speaking it. So we sort of intentionally played with mixing that vocabulary to really kind of evoke how it is that we think about things and experience things and interact with our environment.
As far as the pacing of the episode goes, you were talking about it's introspective and it's paced intentionally a certain way. Um, did you have to kind of slow down? Did you have to kind of appreciate the footage more, or change your workflow at all with something that's so very introspective?
Um, yeah, the pacing is really key to the series. And when I first read the script, it there were some entire scenes that were written in the script as we're watching this in real time. And in a film script or a TV script, usually one page of script is more or less 1 minute on screen. Except that in this case, there were like 5 things that were all in real time, like Penelope's building a fire. She's gathering rocks. She's doing this. She's gathering wood and stuff. I was like, this is going to be like 25 minutes just right here. So actually, the very first cut of the pilot, I really did it based on the script, and I was like, okay, we're doing this real time, and obviously it was way too long, and I sort of caveated that to Mel. I was like, just so you know, I mean, this is I'm just giving you this version so we can see what it really feels like if we are letting things play out in real time. But obviously, we're not going to be able to do that eventually. But yeah, it was really a commitment to that, and I would say that specifically in the second episode, which is sort of the process episode where she's building her camp and getting things settled, like there's a whole scene where she's building a fire, and it turns out there's a lot of steps to building a fire. I mean, you have to clear a little area in the dirt, and then you have to get rocks to build the surround, and then you have to gather wood, and you have to gather more wood, and then you have to gather kindling, and then you have to build a little triangle teepee thing, and then and then you have to try to light it, and you maybe you're blowing it out, maybe you're knocking it over, and that step-by-step process was really fundamental to the spirit of the series, where Mark and Mel really wanted the audience to be along the journey with her and struggling with
Mhm.
all of these things. And the struggle is really key to the experience, because most, both in our day-to-day lives, but especially on screen, we don't see people really learning things live, right, in real time. I mean, if anything, you have a montage. It's like snappy, and you have music, and it's like you have this arc, and at the end they know how to do stuff. And I did have to sort of lean on some editing tricks with that, because like I used a lot of jump cuts to kind of move us through time, but we didn't use music for almost any of those kind of accelerated periods, because we didn't want it to feel like a montage. We really wanted to stay in the struggle with Penelope, and the frustration, and she's trying this and it doesn't work, and she tries this and it doesn't work, and every time she does something and fails, she's learning something, which I think is so cool, because that's the part of our lives with, we have this technology that's constantly helping us not have to do that, and making things easier and efficient and faster, and learning things is really slow and inefficient and frustrating and uncomfortable. And so it's sort of the opposite of what our technology is doing for us. And so yeah, it was very intentional to stay in that pacing, and then that's how it was written. And then again, the challenge was, how do we give the feeling of real time without actually having to be in real time? And so the example of the fire building scene, I kind of accelerated through some of those steps, and like used a lot of jump cuts, use sound design kind of to move us through, still seeing her labor, still seeing her doing all that work and doing all those steps, and but just kind of compressing time. And then when she gets to the point where she's actually trying to light the fire, then it's in real time, and there's like one shot that's like 90 seconds long, and she's just like staring at the fire. And so that was kind of a device that I use pretty often to try to vary up the pacing, so that we were with her on her journey, and then there's a moment where we go, okay, now we're really sitting in it, and now we're just in her experience, really, feeling what she's feeling, the frustration, the joy when she finally gets it, because all those steps also is what helps establish the stakes. Like, if she can't get a fire going, she can't boil water, and then she could die. So like, the stakes could not be higher. And we don't want to gloss over how easy it is, or how hard it is to make a fire, because it's actually quite difficult, especially if, like her, you don't have a lot of experience doing it. So all of those things were kind of in service to each other, but definitely the slow pacing and just being able to sit in that was very intentional and very, a contrast again to our technology driven lives that are everything is about fast, efficient, quick, how many other things can we do at the same time. So I really enjoyed that side of it, just the slow concentration of it.
I took notes as I was watching this because obviously I wanted to watch it with a critical eye. And my notes for the fire scene, I don't have them right here, but was, is she going to make it? Like, because
Good.
I read the synopsis and I knew I was going to be speaking with you, but I intentionally didn't want to read too much about Penelope. I wanted to experience it. And I had my doubts. I had my doubts in episode 2. And it was very labor intensive. And I thought it was interesting, that scene in particular, because we live in an age of curated lives and social media, and especially, young people do. And to see a teenager, go through this and kind of just labor through this, it was quite refreshing. It was a beautiful scene. I love that scene very much.
Great. I'm glad.
So you mentioned sound design a little bit, and I wanted to talk a little bit about episode 4. If you don't remember what episode 4 was, she meets the older woman. And again, I'm trying not to give too much away. She meets the older woman. I was struck by the sound, the conjunction of the sound and the crying at the end of the episode, as well as Penelope's reaction. Can you speak a little bit about that?
I can try. I'm trying not to give away any like big spoilers of like big exciting things that might happen at the end of episode 4. But yeah, the sound design was another tool that we really used to have create those transitions between kind of being next to Penelope and then being in her head and in her awareness. And it was really, really a fun place to be in. And Mel is such an amazing collaborator and is really just gives her, department heads like freedom to try things. And I mean, it was like, this is a sandbox, just not go for it, try stuff. And she just gave me a ton of freedom to play around with stuff and using sound design and time remapping and all kinds of much more sort of far-fetched tools and devices than I usually get to play with. And so yeah, like mixing nat sound and production sound and sound effects, and then also like the voice, and then putting like an echo. And obviously, I built all this in Premiere, and then we brought it to the sound mix to Bad Animals here in Seattle, and they did it the professional way and did Foley and did all this amazing stuff and just brought it really way more to life. But yeah, the sound design was really fun to be able to play with that in terms of really imagining again like what someone who's having this intense experience and all of these things are happening at the same time, and how do we connect those things for her? How do we highlight that the crying and the sound of what's happening in the environment are very closely linked for her? How can we do that in a non-linear way? How can we do that in a non-verbal way, and just to be more evocative? And so and there's a later episode where we have these flashbacks when she's a baby and when she's a little kid, and also using sound design there was huge with the sound of the baby crying and lightning and sort of how we're marrying those things. That was really a fun place to just be able to play with. And Mel again is just like she's up for anything. I mean, there's no bad or stupid idea. It's just, I mean, the crazier the better. And sometimes it sticks and sometimes it doesn't, but often it just playing in that wide of a space allows you to discover things that then don't necessarily work at that moment, but maybe you'll borrow from something else, or maybe you do a version of that. And so yeah, I just feel I was so grateful to be able to have that level of creative freedom.
So the thing that struck me about Penelope is that it was quiet, but it wasn't silent. There was definitely a rich soundscape there because she is in nature and she's experiencing all of these things. And oftentimes we hear her breath or just her moving in the space. You use music very sparsely during the series. How did you decide editorially where music would fit or where something more would fit?
Yeah, the choice of music and sound design, I mean, we played with a lot of different stuff, but one of the things that Mel had evoked from the very beginning was this idea of non-verbal vocals and sort of kind of an ethereal and so I started with that with a lot of temp music, and it's funny because the first couple cuts that I sent to her with that had all that, she was like, whoa, no, no, this is way too much. Like, maybe we don't want to go in that direction. So we said, okay, well, we'll try something else. We sort of tried some other stuff. And then we came back again full circle. And that's just part of the process. It's not about something being right or wrong. It's just sometimes you have to see it and you have to sit with it and you have to, put all the other pieces in place to see how the whole thing fits. But the there actually is quite a bit of music, but I think that it's the places that it comes in, it's often very subtle. And in some places, it's really married into the soundscape. Like an example is the scene on the train in the pilot. And it's one of my favorite music sound design kind of little synergy moments where she finishes this voice recording and she's sort of in this emotional, sitting with all of what that is. It's sort of the first time she's really consciously considered her actions and the consequences of that on other people, and really committing to her journey. So it's this like a lot of stuff going on, and we hear the train horn, and then the score comes in with the vocals, and the vocals are pitched exactly at the same pitch as the train horn. So it's like the vocals kind of come out of that ambient sound. And so there were a lot of things like that throughout that I just thought were so beautiful. And that's all Danny and Saunders, who did the score with their vocalist, Julia Piker. And so there was a lot of intentional moments like that. And then also, yeah, like you said, the soundscape is really, really rich. And we kind of wanted to use music in the moments where we're more going into her head, as opposed to the very day to day, like I'm looking for berries and I'm gathering ferns and stuff like that, because she wouldn't necessarily have had music in her head, I guess, for lack of a better word. But the soundscape in the wilderness, that was also really fun because Kelsey Woods is our sound engineer on set, and he was so just great about going and getting Nat sound everywhere. I mean, he had like 7 microphones planted around this one river, and so it was like close by, sort of far away behind a tree, so we really had a lot to play with there. And then also I am very particular about having the right animal sounds in the right geography. I have a huge pet peeve about seeing movies or TV shows that take place in Seattle and they have crickets, because there are no crickets here. We don't have crickets in the summer. So that kind of thing just immediately jars me, and I feel sort of the artifice. I mean, I'm sure there's plenty of people who don't know that there's no crickets in Seattle, so they don't care about it. But that's sort of my like little detail, and Mel was totally on board with that too. So when we were doing the original just sort of temp mix, I was asking my AEs, like, find sound libraries for Nat sound, because sometimes what we just had production sound, there just wasn't enough of it, or we needed we needed the sound of an owl or something like that. And I was like, make sure it's Pacific Northwest. It can be BC, it can be Oregon, it can be Washington State, Olympic Peninsula, but it can't be east of the Cascades. It has to be the west, and so just get the right birds and stuff, and so it's really all very authentic in that sense, and those are, again, things that maybe most people watching wouldn't know, that, barred owls are not native to the Pacific Northwest, but there's a ton of them around. So you're definitely going to hear those at night. But to us who live here, I like to think that subconsciously it all sort of adds to the immersive experience of really being in an environment.
Probably one of the smartest things I've ever done for my career. It gave me all the tools that I needed to be able to jump into a new career.
Getting myself into a mindset, thinking like an editor, and being around people that I can talk to on that level was really invaluable to me.
A lot of the things that I learned from that class, I still think about.
I loved the classroom. I loved the computer stations. We built a sense of community.
And it also instills a lot of confidence in you to take that and go out into the world.
After I took the class, I felt very prepared to take the next step.
I owe Manhattan Workshop the career that I have right now. Things have been going great, and I really have the Manhattan Workshop to thank for that.
just to speak on, when she's foraging, I thought it was interesting. The sound that I heard the most when she was foraging was the turning of the pages, like her lying on the book. And she only did it a couple times, but it really struck me, and I kind of empathized with her. Like, she's in this place, and she's the only one here, and this is like the only sound, unnatural sound that there is. It was actually, it really brought me into the story.
That's great. Yeah, the book that she's using is Mel went and did some like survival classes, wilderness survival training classes before working on Penelope, because she really wanted it to be authentic, and everything that Penelope eats or forages or collects are all things that are edible. It's, there's one shot that we had where Penelope kind of walks by a mushroom and looks at it, and Mel was like, nope, that mushroom, you can't eat that. I don't even want to give the idea that she's like considering this mushroom. So it was really important to her to have that be authentic. And it's interesting to see also over the course of the show how Penelope's relationship with this book, which is like her lifeline at the beginning, how that changes over time. And I won't give anything away, but we sort of see her confidence and her knowledge and her own experience grow and evolve over time, and so she has less and less reliance on that book.
What was the most challenging part of editing the series? Were there any scenes or episodes that were particularly difficult to shape?
I would say that the one group of scenes that were really challenging were the ones with the bear cub. There was a
friend.
Yeah, there's a real live bear cub in the show. When I first read the script, I was like, at first it's like, oh, she sees a bear cub over there, and I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, we could just like throw that in, CGI or whatever. And then there's this whole other stuff, and I thought, oh wow, no, okay, they're really gonna have to, film with the bear cub. I'd never worked with an animal as an actual character in a scene, and so and it's a bear. It's not like, I don't even know if a dog would have been any better, but what was it was really definitely a team effort, because production just kept rolling on the bear, just like, we're just getting as much footage as we can of this bear around the environment where it's supposed to be in. And then my AEs were like painstakingly combing through the footage and marking, like, the cinder looks this way or looks up, looks down, and, moves to the screen right, screen left, any sort of little thing. And then really crafting the scenes between the bear and Penelope was just, I've have some reality TV experience, and that was like the best training for this, because reality TV is all about trying to create moments that don't exist and like highlight, make these like emotion. People are reacting to this and they're actually not. And so how do you find the thing that looks like a reaction? And so there was very much that, just trying to kind of craft the performance from the bear. And it was pretty cool, actually, because that scene was the first scene, or that episode, those series of scenes, that was the first series of scenes that I had where Megan, the actress, was actually interacting with another actor that I had seen. Everything that I had before that had all been just her alone in the woods. And so this is the first time I'm sort of seeing her like play off of another actor. And what was funny is in the script, the bear cub is written as being this really like shy little timid thing, kind of just, crawls over and gets really scared easily, and Penelope's constantly reassuring it. But in real life, the bear was nothing like that. The bear was like really sassy and just like, kind of entitled and like, just doing its thing, and completely nonplussed by Penelope. And actually Megan was at one point actually changed a line to react to that, because the line is sort of like, oh, it's okay, don't be scared. And she was kind of like, all right, well, I guess you're not going to help me catch this fish or whatever. And so it was really fun to see her kind of spontaneously like play off of her actor, her co-actor, who was giving her a different performance than what was scripted. But yeah, that was a lot. There was a lot of, in that timeline, we had a lot of alternate shots, you know, it was like, okay, here, well, we can have the bear do this, we can have the bear do this. Is it better for the bear's arc for it to, you know, look away at this moment? Are we trying to do this? And just really the focus trying to be on creating a connection between the bear and Penelope. And so, yeah, I'm really like hats off to production for having just gotten just so much footage on the bear, and it really, you know, just trying to make that scene end up feeling natural and fluid, and I feel like we did a pretty good job.
It's funny that you mentioned that scene. That scene's extremely memorable, but she's very taken back by the bear, and the bear kind of becomes commonplace for her, and she almost forgets about the bear when she's faced with having to try to catch a fish. Like the bear's there, and we know the bear's there because the bear's like right there, and she's kind of annoyed at the whole. She's annoyed at not being able to catch a fish. She's annoyed at the bear and everything else, and it's interesting because this is a wild animal, and I don't know that I would ever be annoyed at a bear that close to me. I think I'd just be running away at that point. But it was just a very human, like, oh, you're not going to help me catch this fish. I can't catch
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
It was a great interaction.
Yeah, it was a fun episode to think about the sort of layers that we're seeing in Penelope's, both her personality but also her journey, because yeah, I mean, for sure it's like, why would you stay? There's a bear, you should run away. But as she points out, she's like, I built this camp. This was a lot of work. Like, I've got it all set up here. And she tries to lure the bear away, and the bear comes back. But then also, this is, I feel like, you know, I hope this came across, and we were, you know, we were pretty subtle with this, but the stakes are really high, because if she can't get that bear protein, then the bear is going to keep eating her food, or I mean, it's probably not going to attack her, but it's like either she can eat, or the bear can eat, or hopefully they both can eat. And so I feel like there's that sort of naivete and innocence that she has, but there is also this deeper understanding of what the stakes are, but also maybe not knowing what the best course of action is given those stakes. And that's where, you know, she's still young and she's inexperienced. And so I like sort of watching that play out, and seeing her make these choices that, yeah, a seasoned survivalist would not do that, but she's not a seasoned survivalist, and she's making the best decision based on the information that she has at the time, and that's part of the journey for her.
So I'm going to ask you one last question. And I want to know what your guilty pleasure film or television show is. It can be old or new, but maybe it's something that you come back to, or if it's on, you'll always watch it. Like, what is it?
I love the show Alias with Jennifer Garner back in the early aughts and late 90s. I watched the whole thing, like, religiously. My husband and I watched the whole series. We were actually living in Madagascar at the time, and my brother used to burn DVDs for us and send them, and it was like so exciting to sit on a Sunday. We would just like binge it, and, you know, like totally burn out the drive, like the DVD drive on our computer. And recently I started watching it again with my daughter, and it's fun, her reactions, because she's like, oh, it's so like old, and look at the, you know, low their like pants or their clothes or whatever. She's like commenting on that. But I think it's I love it because it's so structured, and, you know, it's very predictable in a way, but I think everything that it sets out to do, it does really well. And it's just fun to watch her just kick ass all the time and do all this stuff. And, you know, it's just like all of the technology is like a little cheesy now, but, you know, we get it. And so, yeah, I really like that show.
It must be fun experiencing it through your daughter's eyes too, kind of seeing her experience it for the first time.
Yeah, I have to be careful watching shows with my kids. my son is 13 and my daughter's almost 16, and because depending on what it is, if it's a very predictable thing, I have a tendency I'll like start saying out loud what's going to happen, or even like what the lines are going to be, and they really hate that. They find it incredibly annoying, which I totally understand. So I really have to just kind of like my daughter's really into watching around Christmas time, like these like very sort of predictable, you know, formatted Christmas movies, and I can practically like recite the script alongside. And she's told me I am not allowed to watch with her unless I keep it buttoned. So I'm like, okay, that's fine.
They are formulaic, but yeah, they're kind of satisfying.
Yeah, exactly. But they watched Penelope with me, and it was fun. It was really fun to see their reaction. And I mean, it's so different from anything that they watch or that most of us watch on TV at all, just in terms of pacing. But they really got into it, and it was really interesting to hear their reactions in certain moments, and things that maybe perspectives that I hadn't had because I'm just not of that generation. And yeah, it was fun to be able to share that with them.
So I'm a mom too, and I had a big reaction to the finale of the series, or at least this season. How did they take it without giving too much away? Did they? How did they?
I think, yeah, I'm like, how can we talk about this without giving it away? Well, it's a little bit of I mean, it certainly sets us up for a second season, right?
Mhm.
Like cliffhanger. So that's how they interpreted it, and they really want a second season. They want to kind of see the next chapter. So yeah, but I have seen on Reddit there's like a whole thread about Penelope and people hypothesizing, and it's really fun to just read people's different reactions and people kind of arguing about the show. And I thought, well, it's not leaving people indifferent, so that's good.
No, it's not. And I'm with them. I want a second season because at the end it was like, oh,
Yeah, I know. I don't know what's gonna happen. I haven't even, I don't. I'm excited too.
Thank you so much. It was such a pleasure talking to you. That's it for this week. You can check us out on filmmakeru.com or follow us on Instagram at filmmakeru. I'm Jamie Hitchings. Thanks for watching, and thank you so much, Celia.
Thanks for
Appreciate
having me.